All right, how you doing, everyone? I'm Russ Salzberg, and once again, welcome to Big Blue Kickoff Live, presented to you by Pepsi Zero Sugar. New and improved Zero never tasted so good. As always with me, my buddy, my colleague, and just a little bit pumped up today is Paul Dottino, Paulie Dots, at the controls, Pearson Butler, and of course you, the fans out there, the Big Blue fans who are all revved up for another playoff game this week coming up in Philly. How are you, my friend?
I'm doing great, Russ. You know, we were just talking before the show. In the span of 7 weeks, the Giants will now be playing the Eagles for the third time. There's no secrets here. Everybody knows exactly what the Eagles are made of. We know what the Giants are made of. I'm expecting a real steel cage tug-of-war match on Saturday night at the Link, where the Giants have not won a game since 2013. And if you haven't kept track, that's since the days when Tom Coughlin was the head coach.
That's right. Listen, we're facing, I'm not taking anything away from the Minnesota Vikings, but we're facing a much tougher, in particular, defense. It's a very tall order to beat the Eagles. It's a very tall order to go in there and beat the Eagles. The Eagles are 7.5-point favorites, and I think they should be. And I'll say this right up front. I told Paul yesterday, I picked the Giants on my podcast to win the game by the score of 30-27 because I can't possibly pick against the Giants. I mean, we've been through so much together on the downside. This is too much fun, and we're working. I mean, we're here, Big Blue Kickoff. I have my own podcast, but I think it's going to be a very tough game. I think it's going to be a very physical. I think it's going to be, junkyard dogs in the alley. I think for the Giants to win, they have to, first of all, everybody talks about, you can't say enough good things about Daniel Jones, but the key to me in this coming week was also the key to last week. What's that mean? 0 turnovers. 0 turnovers. And you know what? That's that old cliche like in baseball, those bases on balls. In football, it's those turnovers. And if you can stay away from those turnovers and you can protect the ball, it's a big difference. And all you had to do was watch other games this past week, whether it was the Buffalo Bills game, all those games. Turnovers, they're a great equalizer. And, let the Giants take care of business. I expect them. Listen, they're going into this game, hitting their stride, playing their best football of the season. So let it continue.
Yeah, Russ, obviously the turnover factor is going to be huge. Anytime you're an underdog in a game, you have to start with playing clean football. And it's about 0 turnovers. It's about minimizing the penalties. It's about minimizing or totally eliminating the drop passes. Those are the things that you start with if you're an underdog. You got to make sure those things are cleaned up. Once you get that foundation set, excuse me, then you say, well, what else? What else do we have to do? Well, it's clear to me that the Giants must control the clock. They must do it with the run game, specifically to the edges, which means Barkley's going to have to get out there and get some blocking from his tight ends, from his pulling offensive linemen, and from his wide receivers. We saw the block that Golladay gave to Barkley in Minnesota.
How about that?
He obliterated Shelley, the defensive back.
He really
twice on the same play.
Yeah, twice.
Okay? That's the kind of stuff that has to happen. The Giants need to control the tempo and the context of this game by running the ball well, turning some big plays out of a potentially short gain because of outstanding blocking downfield on the second level. They're going to need Daniel Jones, and I don't like to do this, Russ. I'm going to have to say it. Daniel Jones is going to have to run. He's going to have to run more than I want him to. He's probably going to have to run for over 70 yards like he did in Minnesota for the Giants to win this game. Barkley and Jones are going to have to combine, in all honesty, the way I see it, for about 150 yards rushing between the two of them.
I'd say that's a good number.
And you're also going to have to use a healthy dose of short passes as well that act as the extension of the running game. so that you can continue to methodically control the clock and establish this game to be at your tempo. Because here's the thing, Russ. What you want if you're the football Giants, you want this game to be as close to 20 points for the winner as possible. For the Giants to win, this game can't be in the high 20s to the 30s. I know you said a moment you want to pick 30.
I said 30-27.
I don't think you can do that if you're the Giants. I think you need to, if you're going to win this game, you need 24-23, 24-20, 24-21. I think it's got to be as close to the low 20s as you can make it. Because you want to limit the possessions and slow the game down and drag it out.
I base my number on the fact that you have, part of what you're saying is true, you have not one, but two running quarterbacks in this game for each team. Two guys who can do damage. So while, you want Daniel to do his damage and you have Jalen Hurts on the other side, that's why I think that score could get up there, but I still think it's going to be a dogfight. 201-939-4513 is the number. Before we open up the phone lines, let's take care of a little business. Make sure, folks, you go subscribe to the Giants Huddle Podcast. That's right, the Giants Huddle Podcast, because the podcast features a rapid reaction right after each and every game with one of our analysts, an episode midweek featuring an interview. This thing keeps going on. An interview with Bob Papa and head coach Brian Daboll, and an opponent preview of that week's opponent. Search for Giants Huddle on your favorite podcast platform or listen on the Giants app or at giants.com/podcast. Again, 201-939-4513 is the number. I just want to say one thing because, Paul brought up the great block by Kenny Golladay. Everybody talks about Brian Daboll, how, I don't know if the word is resurrected or fixed, whatever, what he's meant to Daniel Jones. But watching Kenny Golladay make those blocks is what told me what I needed to know about the culture of the Giants, thanks to Brian Daboll. There's a guy who's, for all intents and purposes, been miserable. He has underachieved. He's been a mystery to you, been a mystery to me. But there he was, just like there he was in the season finale. There he was, just getting some spot time, making the most of it. That doesn't happen by accident. Now,
No.
you have to have the character and insides as a human being. I'm not even saying as a player, as a human being, which Kenny has, but that also has to come from the head coach. Just like in that season finale when he made that great catch, and then you looked over to the bench, and there was Brian Daboll sitting next to him with his arm around him. It's all part of the process.
We've talked about it all year. And then what happened in Philadelphia? He got to play a few plays, stole a touchdown pass on a 50-50 ball away from his former Detroit teammate Darius Slay in the end zone on a great throw by Davis Webb. Think about this now. You mentioned it the other day. You said, well, now Minnesota has to keep their eye on him.
Oh, 100%.
Well, guess what?
Everybody does.
They may have, but they also got trucked in the process. So let's see now. Kenny Golladay had an impact on that game last week in a different way. Let's see how many snaps he gets this week. And let's see if maybe he winds up either making a big catch or maybe just makes a big block that springs Saquon on a 35-yard run.
Oh, did you hear what you just said? Kenny Golladay had an impact in the game, maybe in a different way. And that's what coaches and managers, people always tell you. If this ain't working for you, you can do something else to make it work for you.
Find a way to help us.
That's exactly what it is. 201-939-4513 is the number. Is that somebody in Barcelona, Pearson? Well, we'll go to Steve.
Wow.
We'll go to Steven first in Barcelona. How are you, Steven?
Hello.
Good. Can you hear me?
Well, I can hear you. Can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah. I'm just, I'm watching on the thing, and it's delayed. That's why I was confused. Yeah, I was looking at Daniel Jones. I was looking at some pictures, and I noticed his legs are monsters. And then I looked back when he was in the combine. He's just, his legs look great, and he's so strong now. I mean, the only guys I could think of who's stronger are Culpepper and Roethlisberger, but he's like running over people like Jimmy Brown. I mean, it's like,
well,
I don't know. I was looking at his.
Let's hold on a second, Steven. I love you, buddy, and especially being a Giants fan, calling. But you know, Jim Brown. You know, when we talk about goats, that's the goat.
Yeah.
So let's just be careful with Jim Brown. Continue.
No, I know. I mean, you know, that's you know, I'm just like he's just really running over people, and you know, it's. I don't know what his upper body looks like. I haven't seen him with his shirt off lately.
Here's what I'm going to tell you.
In the combine, and he was. Yeah.
All right, here's what I'm going to tell you, and the connections kind of filtering or flickering a little bit. But here's what I want to tell you. You remember, I think you were here at the time when Phil Simms was early in his career, and he was more of a runner. He scrambled a lot,
right?
Because there was really not much of an offensive line,
right.
And so Phil had to be mobile. He had to run a lot. Then in those first few years, he got hurt so much, he cut down significantly on his scrambling, and he became strictly a pocket passer. My point is, as Parcells used to say all the time, Phil Simms ain't no quarterback. He's a football player. Because he was tougher than nails, and he would relish lowering a shoulder into a linebacker.
Yep.
Now, that's not the most intelligent thing to do.
No.
But Phil, as a young quarterback in this league, was very, very physical and sturdy and was willing to take guys on. I see Jones doing that right now. When he runs, he reminds me of a younger Phil Simms.
I'll disagree with you on that. I mean, to me, if you're going to make a comparison...
Well, he's like Haas in terms of his athleticism.
Like, to me...
But his toughness is more like Phil.
Well, yeah, I mean, but, you know, a lot of guys are tough. Listen, Eli Manning was no physical specimen. But you know what? There was nobody tougher than Eli Manning.
Yeah, but it was a different style of toughness.
But tough is tough.
That's okay.
Tough is tough. I will say this about Daniel Jones. I mean, don't be surprised about how strong he is. Daniel Jones is ripped. He's a very strong guy, and his works. I'm not going to insult anybody else. No, let's put it this way: nobody on a team works harder than him, off the field or on the field.
See, that's why I bring up Simms, though, because Phil was built like a tight end. Phil was incredibly strong. He was a weight room junkie. Had to be because he had gotten hurt so much.
You know, back in the day, I'll just digress for 1 second when you mention that. Back in the day, there used to be, if you remember, the Seniors Golf Tour used to have their NFL.
At Montclair.
On the tour at Upper Montclair.
Okay.
At Upper Montclair. And they asked me each and every year to host a quarterback challenge. And I remember all the quarterbacks walking towards me, you know, we're getting ready to do it, and you had Elway, you had Simms, you had this guy, Kelly.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm looking at guys, and it looked like, they all looked like, forget tight ends, linebackers. One was bigger than the other. And I'm saying, man, I can't. You don't realize it till how big and strong they are. So, yeah, Daniel just happens to be one of them. 201-939-4513 is the number. Now let's get back to some local calls, and let's go to Rich in Long Island. Hello, Rich. You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hey, Russ, Paul.
Hi.
Not to say that I'm superstitious, but I'm superstitious. I called you guys last week. And I told you, you know, the secondary with Xavier and Andre would be the keys. They were. Their tight end did beat us. But what you guys talked about in your opening about playing mistake football, you know, we got to run with power, control the clock. As always, the interior line is the key. You know, I'm looking for a victory. And really, I just wanted to say that. I wanted to give a thanks to Dave Gettleman. And, Paul, I got a question for you.
Yeah.
You could share any interesting sideline story with adventures at the link that you've had with the fans there. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. Okay, Rich. Yeah, share some of your pleasant times on the sidelines at the link. Then talk about it in the parking lot and every place else.
Yeah, I don't think this is the place to talk about those things. Those folks are very raucous. I think that's probably a good term, right, Russ? Raucous? Good term?
Understatement.
Okay.
Understatement.
I will tell you this. Be very careful when you go down to the link. If you're a Giants fan this week and you got a Saturday night game, be very careful in the parking lot, please. And I'm not being funny. Just be careful in the parking lot. Those fans are notorious for being very boisterous, and they sometimes get a little out of bounds. And I could tell you a lot of stories, but I'm not going to go there right now.
All right, 201-939-4513 is the number. Little business, folks. Follow at Giants on Twitter and retweet to win a $100 Team Store gift card and Modelo prize pack. For every point the Giants score, one lucky fan will win. That's right, 31 fans. 31 fans won last week. Drink responsibly. Modelo, a special beer. Imported by Crown Imports, Chicago, Illinois. Got to be 21 plus. All right. 201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go back to the phone lines and let's check in with Hugo here in New Jersey. Hello, Hugo.
Good afternoon, guys.
Hi.
Hey, a lot has been said about the Kenny Golladay block, but all the Giant receivers block.
You're
That's
right.
why
Good point.
When Daniel Jones gets on the edge and has those successful runs, you got to give a lot of credit to the receivers, and they do a heck of a job on those pin pull concepts when they pull the center and tackle, and those receivers come down on defensive ends.
The Giants receivers are more get-in-the-way blockers than they are physical blockers. Sterling Shepard would get in there and get nasty with a guy, which was always something he took a lot of pride in because he's a much shorter guy and many times was taking on a bigger defender. He was a true blocking wide receiver. Most of the Giants receivers are get-in-the-way blockers. There's a heck of a difference. Golladay was not a get-in-the-way blocker the other day. He ran over the guy.
Hodgins had a good one on that Saquon touchdown, too, right on the edge on a
defensive
end.
He did.
You know what, Hugo, you bring up a fair point, though. I'll ask you this, Paul. With Daniel Jones with his running being part of the package, or packages, if you will, I just wonder if that helps the Giant receivers concentrate that much more on their ability to block because it's their quarterback. It's not like they don't care to block for somebody else, but hey, we listen. This is a big deal, and Hugo made a very fair point. I mean, they help a lot on those runs.
Well, they need to. Dable said earlier this week that you've got to be able to block more on the edges. He's going to need more blocking from his receivers and his tight ends and any of the linemen who get out there. He knows that. The Giants must have an outstanding game blocking on the edges if they're going to win this one this week. That's a very, very important key because running up the middle against those two defensive tackles and actually the rotation that they have at defensive tackle is not easy to do, okay? It's just not. You've got to be able to run off the edges, and considering that their corners are so good at coverage, okay, you can take advantage by running them off the line and then trying to get some yardage out to the sidelines.
201-939-4513 is the number. Thank you for the call, Hugo. Let's now go down to Florida and check in with Ralph. How are we doing, Ralphie? You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hey, Russ. Hey, Paulie. Just great. Like Rich stole my fire. I'm not superstitious, but I'm a little stitious. I called you guys last week, and I told you, Russ, that 11-0 again in one-score games. Eventually, the law of averages, and the Giants got them. But two things I want to make a point on. One thing that I thought Wink did a great job of an adjustment from the first game was how they handled the screens. Darnay Holmes was amazing on the screens.
Yep.
He made 3 huge tackles on them screens. I think they were tackles for loss, if I'm not mistaken. He was amazing. He was slipping through the tackles and just diving and getting through and making big hits on the running back and the receivers. And I think that was huge because it didn't let Minnesota get going on those screens and get big plays. And if I'm not mistaken, they really didn't have a lot of big plays in the game, right? There was a lot of dink and dunk. And
They
Hutchinson,
had
right?
3 pass plays of more than 20 yards, and only one of them was actually a long throw to Thielen down the sideline.
Right,
the other
right.
2 were catch and run.
Right. And the one that Xavier jumped the route trying to get Justin Jefferson, and Hawkinson got behind him on that wheel route. That was one of them, I guess, right?
There was clearly a offensive pass interference on the one long bomb that they threw down the center of the field.
Yeah.
And as Wink said, you guys can talk about that. I can't.
Yeah. So for this game, I'm just saying this game, ball control, of course. But you know what? The Giants got to play their game. And I understand there's different styles makes fights, like you always say, Paul.
Yeah.
But they have to play confident, like you said. They got to walk in there confident.
Yes.
They got to play their game. Don't try to change it up now. The offense has been flowing for the last month. And it's like people saying, when they figured out the Saquon running game, and Dable said, you know what? Here, Daniel, take over the game. Daniel has delivered. So you know what? Let's put the game in Daniel's hand. Of course, Saquon's going to be used in this game. He has to be for us to be successful. But I just feel like we just have to play our game. Don't change anything.
Well, Ralph, you know what? Great point. Thanks for the call, and kudos to you, because Wink Martindale just told us that they said, well, what's the difference? No, what did they do? Or they were asking Mike Kafka about the other team's defense. He says, we have to take care of what we do. And, earlier this week on the Zoom with Brian Dable on Monday, I had asked him, and I brought up the point that I once heard Kobe Bryant say. Kobe said, who knows a little bit about winning.
Yeah.
Kobe said, and being a fierce competitor, Kobe said, preparation doesn't guarantee the victory, but preparation gives you the confidence to go out and do it. And I asked Brian on Monday if the preparation of the Giants going into that game had something to do with so much confidence, because I don't know if you noticed it, Paul. I had never seen the Giants all season long as confident as I saw them going into that game. And after the
I've seen it for the last month, to be honest.
Well, I've seen a lot of confidence, but I think it went to a different level, and I'll tell you when it did. After the Vikings went down and scored, and they marched down and scored on their first possession, you got the shot on TV in their first huddle. Daniel's there with his offense, punching, pumping, fist bumping. Mm-hmm. Let's go. I mean, it was like matter of fact.
The counterpunch.
Yeah, and just what the coaches were saying. And then whether they did it again, Giants, every time they punched, the Giants counterpunched, and they did it with confidence. It was we got to do this now. I thought that was very, very telling.
I'll give you 2 quick points. Not only do I wholeheartedly agree with the Giants' mental approach, because they gained a tremendous amount of psychological positivity out of that game at the Link a couple of weeks ago. Their backups were in a dogfight against Philadelphia starters and basically energized this entire locker room. So, yes, the Giants have tremendous confidence that they can get into another dogfight with their starters now against Philly. And be that as it may, however it turns out, it turns out. But the Eagles are going to know at the end of the day, win or lose, they're going to be in a nasty brawl. That's number 1.
Go ahead.
Number 2, styles make fights. And to steal one of Philadelphia's favorite sons, Smoking Joe Frazier, baby. Smoking Joe Frazier. That's what you got to do. You got to put Smoking Joe Frazier in there against Mike Tyson.
Are you seeing this?
All right? Smoking Joe with that powerful left hook. You got to get in there, and you got to do Smoking Joe to the Eagles. And you got to throw that left hook. You got to bob. You got to weave. You got to throw that hook again. And you got to make this Smoking Joe against Mike Tyson. You got to make it a heavyweight slugfest. That's the way the Giants can win this game.
That was very.
I'm so glad we're on video now.
Yes, I am too. And I was just thinking about it because I had the pleasure of interviewing Smoking Joe, a few times. I would say this, Paul. Let Smoking Joe rest in peace. You have no resemblance the smoking show.
Don't have the power either.
As long as you throw those punches, as long as the Giants throw those punches this week, buddy boy, that's all we need. 201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go down to Houston and check in with Emmett. Hello, Emmett. You're on with Russ and Paul and Pearson.
What's up, guys? How you doing, man? This is my second time getting through. It's an honor speaking to you guys for the very first time. I am hyped. I am excited. Honestly, I just got back. I'm a little late on the Vikings game, but I obviously want to talk about it. Won't go too deep into it, but I just got back from my 4-day trip. I went to watch the game. It was insane. I premeditated this game. I knew it was going to happen. I bought myself some Vegas tickets after to celebrate, and I'm here. I got back home, and I'm just overly excited. I don't even know the words to put it, but I just know that for a fact we're going to get far. I don't want to jinx it because I'm a superstitious person, but I know we're going to get far. This team's confidence is on a different level. I was more nervous than them, and I wasn't even playing the game. It was loud in there. I was waiting not to think that Dan Jones was going to mess up that game, because I always walk in with a positive mindset before any game. But it was so loud in there. I was like, dude, this guy, there's an interception just waiting to happen, because the crowd noise was just insane.
I will say this to your comment. There are teams this past weekend that got whacked and got knocked out of the playoffs. Tampa Bay, Seattle, although they put up a good fight for a half. They got whacked in the second half. San Francisco steamed them.
But in fairness to Seattle, that San Francisco team, they were heavy favorites.
They're outstanding. They're a great team.
That was the one game that you and I said going into the weekend. That was the one game where we said they should win. The other ones to me were like...
Well, Tampa got crushed by Dallas from the very get-go.
That was embarrassing.
The point is, to your suggestion, the Giants know they belong here, okay? They are one of the final 8 teams in the National Football League playoffs, and they know they belong here, no matter what anybody has said about them all season long, or even within the last month as they got into the playoffs at 9-7-1. The Giants don't care. They know they belong. And that is incredibly important from a psychological perspective.
Well, no, to me, you just see a different attitude. Even the way that we see him walk around the building. When you feel good about yourself, it allows you to go out and do your job better. It's like your everyday existence. It just improves, and they all feel good about themselves. Listen, I agree with Paul. The confidence level that we've seen for the last month just continue to rise. Let's just hope it didn't reach its apex this past week, because they're going to need more of that. They're going to need more of that Saturday night.
Not at all. If anything, I think it enhanced it. This gave them more of a confidence boost if they didn't even have it, which we just spoke on, and they did. So I honestly believe, I'm going to call it right now, 27-24 Giants.
All right.
This week.
Thank you.
Thank you for the phone call, guys.
All right, Emmett, thank you.
Russ, if you're not bold and assertive and you don't go into this game saying we're going to take what we want, then you're not doing your job.
I always say this about all teams. Whether you're the best team in the league playing the worst team in the league, you know how players think, athletes think. Their job is, the coaches, we still think we're going to win this game. That's the attitude. If you go into a game thinking that you can't win, no sense showing up.
Yeah.
No sense showing up.
If we could, we might, we hope.
No.
If you're doing that, then don't even bother taking the bus down to Philly. You can't do that.
Now,
you go down there saying we're going to take it.
Let's put it this way. The confidence level has risen so much. Understand this. If you've watched here all season, you know this. Call it. I don't. At this point, I don't even want to say overachieving. I'm just going to say the Shane Dable era is ahead of schedule. I mean, ahead of schedule. When Paul and I were talking the first week, we were saying 8-9, 9-8, so it was 9-7-1. But just Everybody seems to be hitting their stride. And, and it's a lesson to everybody about lack of patience. A lesson to everybody. It takes time. It's not just Daniel Jones growing. It's Dexter Lawrence. It's Julian Love. It's a lot of guys growing. And when you grow and you grow together, you gel together. It just doesn't happen overnight. Paul, you've been through everything here. If you go back, think about it. What was Bill Parcells' record his first year? 3-12-1. Mm-hmm. If social media was what it back then, Bill might, as it was, he almost didn't survive.
I know.
So he might not have survived. You know what, Chuck Noll? The Chuck Noll. 4 Super Bowls. The Chuck Noll. You know what he was in his first year? 1-13. I mean, there's gotta be. You mentioned Phil Simms. Phil Simms they weren't putting him in Canton. Certainly not the first years. In fact, Bill Parcells sat him down and made Scott Bruner the starter. It just doesn't happen right away. But in this world today that we live in, if it doesn't happen right away, you're a bum. They want to run you out of town. I was talking about that this week on my podcast. No, fortunately, and I said be careful what you wish for because it might come true. Fortunately, for the Giants fans, the Giants didn't listen to the wishes. And now everybody is throwing roses at the Giants and Daniel Jones. 201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go to Coach Marvin in Delaware. Coach.
How you doing, Russ?
What's
up?
How you doing, Russ? I'm good. How you doing? We hear you. How you doing? Marvin, Coach.
All right. How you doing, Paul? Yeah.
We got you, Coach Marvin. I think the reception on your cell phone's not so good, but let's hopefully get your call. Go ahead.
Yeah, I'm in the car. That's why you probably don't get me that good.
I got you.
I was just calling. In a way, Russ, last week I was with Paul. I got a game that I want, and we got it. We went in there and played the way we wanted to play and take that game. This week, I'm leaning back a little bit because we're playing a different beast this time.
Yeah.
And this is a beast.
Yeah.
This is going to be a game, and like Paul talking about that boxing analogy, that's what this has to turn into for us to survive this game. We're going to have to put in a fight to win a game like this. And I am a little nervous about it, but this is a game that my guys, I'm not telling them, this is a game we're going to win. We're going in there. We already know we go into games to win, so I don't have to say it. The thing I would do is I would be thinking more, if we go by the game plan, we should be good coming out of this game. Only thing they need to do is worry about that game plan, execute the game plan, and then the end result is going to be the end result. Because in the game plan, you can't account for penalties, you can't account for turnovers. So there's things that changes the game. It's how you adjust to those things in the game. So this is going to be a tough game. I heard Paul talking about the fans. Fans should be careful. And I live in Delaware, right down the street from the stadium. I work for the Department of Justice, and I may be there this week. I'm going with Harold Carmichael's nephew.
Wow. There's a name from the past.
I may be.
Remember when Beasley Reese flattened him in the 81 season? One of the great hits of all time in the Giants secondary.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'd like to give a shout-out to my girl. She's from Europe. It was her birthday last Saturday. So, Dorda Elzbieta, she's from Europe. And she became a Giant fan this weekend, Paul.
Good stuff. I'm glad to hear that. Coach, see? You're coaching everybody up. I love it.
I'll tell you, one week you call us, you got 5 women and a luncheonette. This week you're in the car. You're cooking with gas.
I don't see retirement anytime in your future, Coach.
No.
Hey, listen, before you go, real fast, Coach. Real fast before you go, I'm going to ask you one quick question, and I want a quick answer from you. How do you feel about the psychology of this game, given that the Giants' backups gave Philly fits and forced the Eagles to play their starters all 4 quarters just 2 weeks ago?
I think it's a good energizer, but it's hard to read, Paul, because, sometimes, and I had those, going into a game, and I know they don't have their star player, or they're not good enough. How are we going to react to that team when we go to play them? I don't know how they body language. They can look fine, but when the games start, weird things start happening. Penalties start happening. So I kind of get caught up in maybe I got to look at it. Maybe Philly didn't take us as serious in that game rather than the other way around. Well, even though I'm still confident going in the game.
Well, you know what I'm going to say to that?
So I'm confident.
Go ahead, Marv.
What's that?
No, go ahead. Finish your point.
Real quick. So I'm not. That's a good question about Paul, about how you do it. It's hard to read people in this situation because I can't read what Philly was thinking when they went into that game. Were they motivated? They needed to win it, but were they motivated knowing that we didn't have our quarterback?
Well, they were motivated. Thanks for the call, Marv.
All right, Coach.
Here's what I think on that, and I understand your point on this. I think the effect of what the Giants did in that last game with the guys that they played had a monumental, enormous effect on the Giants. It added to what we've been talking about, the confidence. Mm-hmm. It added to the confidence of the backups. It added to the confidence of the starters because the starters, and you were there on the sidelines, the starters were all into it.
Oh, yeah.
They were not like, pardon the expression, half-ass observers. They were into it, cheering their team on. It gave the entire organization confidence. I don't think that did anything to
deflate Philly?
No, I don't think it did anything to deflate Philly because here's another factor in that. Sometimes you have to look at the situation. As much as the Giants wanted to win that game, and as much as the Eagles were, quote unquote, the superior team going in, the Eagles needed that game. Whether anybody, they were in the playoffs, but they needed that win to get that number one seed. The Giants, and we know we don't like saying people play with house money, but in that game, they could just go out and play football. They were the 6th seed. So the pressure in that game, there was no pressure on the Giants in that game except individual pressure to go out and perform. The pressure was on Philly. So I really quite frankly, Paul, I put both previous games out the window because, listen, what was the game, December 11th? When they got slumped 48-22? Was there Xavier McDaniel? There
was no McKinney, no Jackson, and no Williams.
Hello?
On the Giants defense.
Enormous. And just,
that's why I don't look at that game as much of a factor.
Listen, as Brian Dable said this week, this is the game they got to deal with. Yeah, they can look at all the film, which they're going to do, which the Eagles are going to. Listen, Paul, you brought it up. Teams have faced each other 3 times in a season. I'd like to know how many teams faced each other in prior seasons 3 times within 7 weeks.
Well, that's the surprising part is that it's been so concentrated.
Yeah. I mean, there ain't no surprises.
Yeah. Hey, one thing off of what you just said, we'll go right back to the phones. I do think there's pressure on the Eagles. They were the top seed, and they were going through this season with the possibility of even being undefeated for a while,
let me ask you
right?
a question. You say you think there's pressure on the Eagles now.
Much more.
Oh, I won't dispute
Much more.
that.
They're playing home, and they're the number 1 seed.
I was just talking about the last regular season game.
Oh, yeah.
That's all.
Well, in this game coming up, the pressure's all on them. The Giants should be the ones playing loosey-goosey.
I'll disagree. You know what? When you
the Link is not going to be happy if they're falling behind in this game.
I'm not saying no, but when you get this far, you're in the locker room with me. You see these guys every day with me.
Giants are loose, man.
They're loose, but they want to win.
Sure they do.
They feel the pressure of advancing. I don't that kind of house money.
I don't sense it.
No,
I don't think it's house money, but I think that for them, they're fun, they're loose, they're confident. I think Philadelphia, let's face it, if Philadelphia gets beaten by the Giants on Saturday night, that is going to be disastrous for them.
Well,
because they're the number 1 seed. They're home where they've beaten the Giants every single time since 2013. They have won 15 out of the last 18 games against the Giants and 24 out of 31.
Paul,
to them, it's like egg on their face if they lose this game.
So basically what you're saying is there's more pressure to be a favorite than to be the underdog.
In this particular game, I totally think there is.
I'll disagree with you on that.
To them, the season's a failure if they lose.
The team, the pressure, you get to this juncture. The Giants are 2 wins away from going to the Super Bowl. It's pressure on everybody. I will disagree with that.
Okay.
201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go down to the Florida Keys. I don't think we've ever had Peter here from the Florida Keys. Hey, Pete, you're on with Russ and Paul. How you doing?
Hey, guys. Good. How you guys doing?
Hi.
Good.
Wow, I'm driving out from work listening to you guys. This is a really good show, by the way. You guys are hitting a lot of really good points. One,
Appreciate
I didn't realize in almost a decade we didn't win at the lake. So that was a little disheartening to hear, although I'm used to kind of them losing out there. One question I wanted to pose to you guys and kind of get your opinion. I know you're going to try to squeeze others on the line. Everybody wants a piece of it. In your opinions, what do you think that the X factor player is going to be on offense and defense for the Giants for them to win this year? Not this year, this game.
The X factor on each side of the ball?
Yeah, the Giants X factor on offense and on defense.
Daniel Bellinger on offense, Landon Collins on defense.
Oh, nice. I have a funny feeling that Julian Love is going to do something special. I feel like he's going to get a pick 6 or something. I actually dreamt about it last night. It was kind of
That's
weird.
cool.
I'm gonna say the X factor. Listen, an obvious X factor is the quarterback. Okay, an obvious X factor is the quarterback. So I kind of like Paul's. I kind of like Daniel Bellinger. I was also maybe going to say Isaiah Hodgins. And on defense, I'm going to go with the rookie, Kayvon Thibodeau.
There we go. One last question before I cut out. So Eagles have sacked offenses 70 times this year.
Right, second all-time to the Bears. Bears hold the NFL record. They had 72 sacks one year. Yes, go ahead.
So to combat that, I'm hoping that there's going to be some type of screen packages built in. I wonder how the Giants are going to handle that, because that's a scary statistic.
You run the ball a lot, and you use the short passing game as an extension of the run. What you don't do is have Daniel Jones throw the ball 35 times in this game. That would not be a good idea.
Gotcha. Hey, thanks, guys. Appreciate your work. Thank you.
You got it.
All right, thank you, Peter. That's an interesting. When we talk about X factors, which guy on each side of the ball. Let me tell you, offensive line has to come up really big, especially that front.
Well, that's 5 guys. It's not just one.
No. I'm just saying, take your pick. But yeah, I know. But that's talk about the X factor, because I mean, as he just brought up, what'd you say? 72 times.
70 times this year. They had 70 sacks. They got 4 guys with double digits.
Yeah, well.
And Hassan Reddick is a very, very dangerous speed rusher off the edge. In fact, in the last game against Philly, believe it or not, it was the combination of Neal in the first half and Parrott in the second half that actually shut him out. It was the first time in 9 weeks that Hassan Reddick did not get at least half a sack or more. How incredible is that? He had like 16, or what do you have, 16 or 18 for the season. I got it written down here in my notes. He had 16, tied for second in the NFL. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
201-939-4513 is the number. Let's go to Steve in Connecticut. Hello, Steve. You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hi.
Hey, guys. What's going on? How are you?
Good to talk to you.
I just had, a quick point on the receivers, and then I just want to talk about Daniel Jones for a second. But I'm not saying for the future, and I'm not saying compared to other teams, but I think for Daniel Jones and this team, the situation that they have going in right now in the present with their receiving core, I think is a lot better than people think. And I think for two reasons. Firstly, I think because people are still looking at a guy like Hodges or maybe Slayton or Bellinger based on, where they were drafted and where they thought they were in the beginning of the year. I don't know if we would be thinking about them the same way if they were, say, like a second-round pick. But the other reason is because I think we've seen with Jones is that what's most important to him is consistency with his receivers. You see, he has a rapport with Slayton and he had it with Shepard when he was healthy. And I think this is the first time in his career, even when they had guys like Tate and, Shepard would be out 1 week, then Tate would be out 1 week, and even guys who were quote-unquote more talented. But I think this is the first time that he's had the same consistent three guys and four, if you include the tight end, going, 8-10 weeks in a row. And I think you can really see that build up.
Well, Steve, I'm going to disagree with you a little bit. I don't think the Philadelphia Eagles, I don't think any coach, really any coach, looks at so-and-so and says, that guy's a fifth-round pick, that guy's this off a practice squad. What coaches look at, and Paul, you know this because you study.
The tape.
Coaches look at the tape. You know what? Adam Thielen, undrafted. They don't look at him. When they went into the game last week, Brian Dable wasn't looking at him, and
Right.
Kafka wasn't looking at him, and Wink as a guy undrafted. I don't think that. Isaiah Hodgins, everybody should understand this. I read someplace, I forget where, I read someplace, well, look, they were able to get Isaiah Hodgins off a scrap heap or something to that effect. I'm paraphrasing. Isaiah Hodgins came from the Buffalo Bills. And he was two things about that.
He was buried behind a great receiving core.
Hello, on top of which he had been injured. There was no room for him to play there.
Right.
It wasn't that he was bad. It wasn't that he was so-so. It wasn't he was men's. There was no room. Diggs and company, that's why he didn't play. They knew Shane, as soon as he was available, Shane and Dable gobbled him up. Mm-hmm. Now we're getting to see what kind of talent he is. And I can say this, and I know Paul can concur, not only is he a great talent, he's a great kid.
He is a good kid.
He really is. Isaiah
Kafka just called him a pro. Pro's pro.
Yeah.
They love him.
Isaiah Hodgins is the entire package. So the Giants got themselves, I don't know what's going on with
He was a sixth-round pick for Buffalo, by the way. He was a low choice. But that's irrelevant. How you got here is irrelevant.
I'm glad you used that word irrelevant because if there's one thing, and I'll digress for a second, because our mouths to God's ears, hopefully we're going to get a chance to face Mr. Irrelevant in the following week. But when they call somebody Mr. Irrelevant like Brock Purdy, Mr. Irrelevant because he's the last pick in the draft, you know what I say? You know who's irrelevant? All the knucklehead, all the so-called experts who didn't have him. Just like all the knucklehead experts who had guys like Thielen. Well, you know who led the league in touchdowns, I think, the last 2 years? Also undrafted. Austin Eckler of the San Diego Chargers. Don't give me irrelevant. It's irrelevant for you to think anybody is irrelevant. These guys are football players.
I'll give the caller, there's one thing you said that Brian Boldinger has talked about, and that is Daniel Jones, at least right now, has 3 reliable guys that he trusts and can go to at any time. And because there has been consistency. He knows he's got Richie James on the field. He knows he's got Slayton on the field. He knows he has Hodgins on the field. The Giants haven't had a consistent trio to stay on the field over an extended period of time. It seems like forever. So that much, the consistency of having those guys who he can count on is definitely a part of what's happened here. I would agree with that.
I would agree. Thank you for the call.
Yeah.
Thank you for the call, Steve. We mentioned something before about Dable going over to Golladay. How about Dable to show you what kind of character he's built on that team? I mean, nobody felt worse than Darius Slayton when he dropped that ball.
Yeah.
I mean, including all of us. And there was nothing to say. And you could see what Darius was doing to himself And there was the coach going up to him, grabbing him by the shoulders. Forget about it. Let's go.
You want to know part of the difference between this team and some of the Giants teams of the past? Evan Ingram dropped the ball in a very similar situation in Philadelphia, and the Giants lost the game because they could not hold on. This time in Minnesota, they dropped the ball in a very similar situation,
Great
and the
point.
defense, Wink's defense, and those guys stepped up and said, not this time.
Yep. Which, by the way, to digress for 1 second, I was pretty happy for Evan Ingram in his game this past week.
Evan Ingram had a really nice year for Jacksonville.
Yes, he
Good
did.
for him.
Good for him.
Good dude.
He's made himself
Really good
he's
dude.
made himself more money. Good for him. I mean, you know what? When you talk about quality guys in a locker room, Evan Ingram is right up there at
No
the
doubt.
top of the class. Let's go to Roxbury and check in with Wilson. Hello, Wilson. You're on with Russ and Paul.
Hey guys, how are you?
Hi.
Hey, listen, I got one thing on the game and one thing on people going to Philadelphia. On the game, I don't put any solace and any weight on what happened at the Meadowlands because, listen, everything that couldn't go wrong went wrong. The defensive back was a shell of what it is now, and it came to a point where Brian Dable said, "You know what? Let's just lose this battle because we have a war to win." And the Giants it's a completely different team. So I don't put any weight on any of that stuff. You know what I mean?
It is amazing at how everything has changed since
Exactly.
that time for the Giants, primarily because of their improved health.
Of course. That's what I'm saying. But that's what I was saying, guys. And listen, and going over there, listen, about 9 years ago, two of my buddies and myself, we went there. And you Paul, listen, at the parking lot, man, listen, I had to take a bat out of my truck.
Yeah.
Yeah, listen, and Paul, I don't care. Listen, I'll bat your head with a bat.
Wilson, thanks for the call, bud. But you know what? We don't want to get. Paul just offered earlier, and I wouldn't say just in Philly. He'd say just be careful.
Be smart.
When you go into these games, people, the intensity gets revved up.
Especially a night game, Russ.
Yeah, which means people were in the parking lot, people were drinking all day. That's when things get hairy. So just be careful. I mean, we don't want to talk about going into a car and taking out a bat and bashing somebody's head.
Don't go there.
No,
don't go there. Just be smart. Use your head, and you know what? Just enjoy the game. That's it.
Let's go down to Texas and check in with Lou. How you doing, Lou? You're on with Russ and Paul. What's up?
Hey guys, how's it going today?
Where in Texas are you?
I'm in the Dallas Fort Worth Metroplex, about 35 miles from Dallas, about 20 miles from Fort Worth.
Boy, wouldn't you love the Giants and Cowboys to advance?
Oh gosh, I can't stand it. But okay, but let's talk some defense. So I want to first say, and I'm prefacing the statement as a good thing. That was not a Wink Martindale typical defense on Sunday. That's a good thing. He's learning. He realized, hey, I can't go all out. They got this incredible receiver we need to contain.
Well, that's
that's
what you call Lou. That's what you call game planning.
Adjustments, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I think is amazing. Now, my question being, this week, do you see him going back to his more aggressive style with Hurts, with Jalen Hurts possibly being hurt, and you want to get him on the ground as much as possible?
Well, I think you have two problems with doing that. Number one, if you don't get there, you will pay a big price. So you better make sure that if you're dialing up some pressure packages, that it's in the right spot with the right guys out of the right formation, because you've got to get home. You want to hit Hurts as hard and as early and as often as you possibly can, because you want to test him. You want to see how much pain he's going to be able to deal with coming off of the shoulder injury. That's true. There's nothing nasty about that. That's just a game of football.
No, you're right. And Lou, I don't know about you. And you know what, Paul? You and I haven't discussed it. We've seen a lot of bad calls. And this is not my Giants' heart talking. That roughing the passer call on Dexter Manley late in that game was absolutely absurd. I thought it was,
Dexter Lawrence. You said Manley.
Oh my God, boy, I'm really.
You're really old.
Yeah,
I thought that was a nickname for him.
The only question was he He did briefly hit him in the helmet.
Oh,
You
know what?
To the head.
Listen, thank you for the call, but I mean that was like a graze. It was absurd. My apology, but that call on Dexter Lawrence was absurd. Yeah. It was absolutely, and kudos to Dexter for handling himself, because that's a spot where you could have blown a gasket and jumped in somebody's
Wink said he thought that the penalty flag made Lawrence play harder on the next play.
I happen to agree, but that's what really, what kind of young pro he has turned into. But I'll tell you something: some of these roughing the passer calls, they need to be reviewed. Some of them, because it's absurd.
Look, in reference to the caller's question about what do you do? All right, here's the good news: Adoree Jackson only missed 2 snaps last week after missing 7 games because of a knee injury, and he played extremely well. So, because the Eagles have basically 2 number 1 elite receivers, guys in Smith and obviously Brown, who can just make big plays at any time,
right?
You could probably say, you know what, Adoree? I don't know which one he's going to get. Okay, my guess is he probably takes A.J. Brown. And you say, okay, you know what? Do what you can to limit him as much as possible, and you worry about more of the bracketing or the double teaming on Smith. I would probably bracket Smith. I don't think I'd double him so much as I'd bracket him. And I think you could probably see a lot of that during the course of the game. But in terms of Hurts, why I mentioned Collins before, I think you could see some Collins spying Jalen Hurts in this game.
I'd agree with that.
I would spot him as a spy, and that could inhibit him taking off so much, because whenever Jalen Hurts takes off with the ball, punish him.
All right. Time's running out here. I gave my pick of 30-27 Giants. You were close last week. You had a 34-24.
Yeah, but I'm not ready to pick this game yet.
Come on. This is the last time you and I are together until next week.
Well, but we'll talk in the lunchroom all week.
Don't chip the fans. Give me something here.
Oh, as of this morning, I had 27-23 Eagles.
Ooh.
And then I spoke to some folks, retired folks who have been in this business a long time, and they kind of convinced me that perhaps the Giants win this game 24-23.
Ooh, so that's what you're going with.
I'm waffling. I'm probably going to flip-flop at least 3 or 4 times in the next 3 days.
Well, flip-flop... Don't do any flip-flopping now. Give us the pick. Right out there.
I think the Eagles probably survive.
You heard it here. He's got the Eagles surviving. I got the Giants moving on by the final score of 30-27. Either way, folks, we're going to be here next Wednesday and together. And my gut feeling is next Wednesday, it ain't going to be a wrap-up for Russ and Paul. It's going to be a preview of the NFC Championship
I hope so, Russ. I hope so.
But until then, it is I, Russ Salzberg, for my good buddy Paul Dottino, the terrific man at the controls, Pearson Butler, and of course you, the fans out there. It's been a great day. It's been a fun season. We want it to continue. Always remember the number to call, 201-939-4513. Get yourselves revved up for Saturday night. Enjoy the playoff game, and we will see you back here next week. Have a good one, folks.